30,000 tons of rock come crashing down onto a 2-lane highway, threatening road crews working in the area.
I looked up and their trees were coming down at the same time. So we knew this was not your average old slide. We didn't expect anything like that.
That's something you'll never forget.
November 10th, 2009, Polk County, Tennessee. It's a dreary, chilly morning, and WDEF news cameraman Alan Fairbanks is covering the story of a boulder that has fallen onto US 64.
Originally, we were just going to try to get some pictures of a boulder out in the middle of the road. We didn't know how big, and we didn't know if there were any cars trapped underneath.
When Fairbanks and reporter Bill Mitchell arrive, the road is closed to traffic, and the Tennessee Department of Transportation, better known as TDOT, is using a giant hydraulic hammer to break up the enormous rock.
It was huge. It was massive. It covered up an entire lane of the road. They were hitting this thing with all they had, and it was not cracking. You could just see little splinters of rock fly up into the air. But as far as breaking that thing apart, it wasn't going anywhere.
The 24-mile 2-lane highway goes through a narrow pass called the Ocoee Gorge and is flanked by Little Frog Mountain on one side and the Ocoee River on the other. The trip through the gorge normally takes 20 minutes, but with the road closed, the detour around the mountain adds more than 2 hours to the commute.
There's a tremendous amount of pressure to get the road open, but you've got to do it and do it safely, though.
Steve Jones, TDOT's Polk County supervisor, knows commuters want him to work fast.
We got people that get mad at us when we stop them for 5 minutes doing maintenance work. You can imagine what it was like for hours.
According to Jones, the area gets 2 to 3 rock slides a year, and when they happen, a TDOT geologist is always called to the scene.
It's her call to view the situation to see whether we can get it safely done, get everything stabilized, to make sure it's safe for the traffic to come through.
Vanessa Bateman is in her TDOT office in Nashville when she gets the report of a rock slide in Polk County.
At that point, it wasn't clear that it was an emergency, but they had a rock in the road. The road was closed. So when the road is closed, everybody gets excited and, okay, what's going on?
It takes Bateman 3 hours to drive to the site, and when she arrives, there are about 30 people working to get the road open.
The emergency response folks from Chattanooga were there, the county maintenance guys were there, and then a construction company had been called to come in to bring in the equipment that would be needed to break up the rocks that were on the road, get them off. There was one larger rock, and there was a news crew.
We saw somebody from TDOT show up, and this young lady got out and she walked up and she looked at me and she walked on past, and she glanced at the boulder, and then she went over and talked to Mr. Jones.
Bill Mitchell, a 30-year news veteran, has covered many rock slides during his career, but none this big.
And then she came back over and she said, why don't you guys move back a little way? She said, I'm hearing things up on that mountain that really unnerve me. And I said, what are you hearing? She said, I'm hearing pops and snaps and things that make me believe that some more debris may come down. So we moved back about 20 yards. It's about that time.
I heard a sound. It sounded almost like a car door slamming. It was just a really sharp report. I talked to Steve, the county maintenance supervisor, and said, have you heard this sound before? What's going on? He said, yeah, we did indeed hear this before. And at that point, it's like, we've got to get all this construction equipment to stop. We need to hear what's going on.
Sensing imminent danger, they stopped the jackhammer and moved the construction and news crews even farther back.
Vanessa goes on and she takes a look at the mountain, and then she walks back and she's talking to some of the TDOT personnel, and all of a sudden they start walking back. She jumps in her car and drives to the other end of the road, and they're walking backwards. They go right past me, and I turn to them and I say, what's going on? What'd she say? And she said the mountain's gonna come down. So I said, really? And he said, yeah. She said, run.
Fairbanks moves to safety, but as a photojournalist instinctively keeps his camera rolling, even when it looks like nothing is going to happen.
I just set up the camera and waited, and our reporter Bill Mitchell came up, and he said, you know, we probably ought to get back to the station. And I said, yeah, you're probably right. But I don't know, she looked really convinced. I'd hate to leave and then hear that it had fallen down. So we waited, and we almost both gave up at this point and almost turned our heads away from it. And then all of a sudden, a big slab of rock came down.
30,000 tons of mountain crashes down onto the road. It takes only seconds for rocks, earth, and trees to descend onto the road where the men were just standing.
The rocks hitting the ground were so loud, you could almost feel it shake, and all you could hear was that rumbling sound. It sounded like something right out of a movie. It sounded like cars crashing. The rocks were just hitting the ground, and all of a sudden it stopped and everything came to a standstill.
I'm standing there looking at this thing, not even believing my eyes, and then the whole thing just comes rushing down the slope with this immense amount of noise and dust, and you never see something like this in person.
I say so much stuff going through your mind, because to see rocks the size of Greyhound buses come off the side of that mountain, when they hit the road, then we found pieces of the yellow line in the center of the river, 200 feet away. The road was gone. When I watched those rocks come down, they didn't stop. I wonder, you know, if anybody'd been out there, could we have ever found them?
While the road crew assesses the massive damage, the news crew asks themselves the age-old photojournalist question: did we get the shot?
My big worry was it actually rolling? And, you know, I waited a little while before I hit stop. And then I thought, please let this be on camera. Please let this be on camera. And I went back and rewound the tape and hit play, and there it was. And I felt a big sense of relief. Got it.
I knew he had it. When he didn't talk to me, he just stood there and grinned.
It takes road crews 5 months to reopen the highway. The total cost of the cleanup, $2.1 million.
We worked in the snow, we worked in the rain to get the site stabilized to where we could open the road again. These guys started working from ropes, doing the initial scaling so that it was safe to move equipment in below the slope. And then a lot of work was done from a crane. We actually went in and used rock bolts, 15 to 40 feet into the rock face, and added bolts to the site to try to stabilize everything.
While the community is happy that the road is open again, they are also proud. Because of the quick thinking and expertise of a road supervisor and a geologist, no one is injured or killed by the rock slide.
I get some cold sweats from time to time thinking about all of the things that could have gone wrong that day. If I'd stopped for coffee, taken a little extra time to go have lunch before coming out to the site. The timing of everything was such that once I got there, we had time to see what was going on, get everybody out of the way before the slide actually occurred.
Had she not have been there, you know, those rocks would have come down on not just Bill and myself, but everybody that was working that scene, all the TDOT crews. It would have been a much, much different story had we had been standing in that same spot.